to another episode of the Black Wealth Effect podcast. I'm your host, Mario. As always, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment for our show so we can keep bringing you this great content. Our guest this week is Jude. Jude, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mario, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you on. Definitely excited to learn about your various experiences. I know you've had a lot of success in the real estate space at a relatively young age in a short period of time. And so, yeah, definitely excited for you to share your experiences with our listeners.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the kind of questions you're going to ask me. I don't want to. I want to see if you're going to dive too deep into my life or upbringing. So let's see.
Yeah, let's jump in. And
Sure.
so, on the show, we've had many guests who are tenured investors who've been investing for years, have had a lot of success in various different ways. As I mentioned off the top, for you, you've had a lot of success at a young age. And so I'm curious, throughout your, or even actually before your investing journey, what was describe that moment for you where you decided to invest in real estate? What was that kind of aha moment for you?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it really starts at a pretty young age. When I was really young, I started 9 years old doing newspaper deliveries, doing all these random entrepreneur side hustles, buying and selling. Throughout high school, I had a landscaping company. I was door knocking, trying to get people to let me shovel their snow or mow their lawns, and just trying to do anything that really made me money. And for whatever reason I did that, I just had some sort of drive. We were relatively well off when it comes to my family and stuff, just normal middle class family, but I just had some sort of urgency to really be independent. So I kind of started off that way. Did pretty well in terms of just random side hustles throughout high school. And then, yeah, just bought my first property at 19, and then kind of scaled from there. Just really had some sort of urge and passion to really just be something and build something of my own. And yeah, that's kind of how I got started. And then then getting into real estate, kind of everything really hit an exponential curve for me, because obviously got in at a good time, right before COVID, and then everything went pretty well. And then obviously I changed my strategy to be a little bit more strategic when it comes to what I'm purchasing and how I'm going about building an actual business when it comes to real estate. And I think that those experiences at a really young age really taught me kind of the hard work and the hustle it takes to build something. And now doing it today, it's piece of cake to me, because I'm just used to doing all that grunt work in the very beginning. And now it's easy because I'm just trying to systemize things and make it an actual business out of it. So that's kind of how I started and how I went about starting my real estate journey.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. And there's definitely a few aspects of that story that we're definitely going to unpack a little bit kind of as we go along. Um, I know you have an engineering background. Are there any specific experiences kind of just going through your program in school, or any aspects or any things that you learned from an engineering perspective
Mhm.
that you apply in your real estate business today?
I think engineering actually has a really big impact to the way I really think, because obviously school as an engineer is incredibly difficult. It's a lot of numbers, a lot of math. Growing up, I wasn't the biggest math guy, but I just knew math is somewhat important, and ultimately did decide to go to engineering school. And that sort of thinking and that frame of mind really taught me how to run numbers, be good at negotiating, figure out how to reverse engineer deals where I'm able to kind of make a win-win outcome for myself and the seller, because a lot of my deals are direct to seller kind of problem solving. So I feel like taking the numbers approach, there's two sort of approaches to things. There's the one-to-one communication, relationship building sort of thing, but there's also the numbers. So obviously, me as being an engineering background, I think having that numbers experience and have being able to manipulate numbers really helped me kind of figure out win-win scenarios with sellers, and also where I'm able to take a deal and make it 10 times better because of the way I'm able to structure it, and be creative when it comes to that sort of back end sort of numbers thing, and when you're at the drawing board.
Yeah, that's great. And you touched on a few, I think, important skill sets with being successful in investing, right? Like the analytical piece,
Yeah.
We always say in the show, like real estate investing, I think any business really, like it boils down to the people and like managing those relationships, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think like when it comes to like really connecting with people, there's certain different personality traits that you're dealing with when it comes to like a seller. There's one of those people that, you know, really love their properties. They really are into this. They're very hands-on. And those are the people you probably don't want to talk, you know, numbers too deep, because they'd rather focus on, oh wow, you have an amazing building. I love what you have, what you've done to the place. You know, things like that. Even normal home
Yeah.
sellers, right? But there's also like the, you know, like the doctors, lawyers, kind of professionals who just own real estate as sort of an investment. And those people, I feel like if you relate to them like on a number standpoint, you know, you get really deep and you connect with them and they're able to kind of relate to you, right? But you have to know when to kind of balance the two. So obviously connecting on a personal level for me is like, I'm just trying to build up that skill in terms of like the sales side of things and just, you know, building that sort of connection, right?
Yeah. And that rapport, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, like for guests that we've had on the show in the past, one of the questions we normally ask is like if you were able to go back in time and speak to your younger self,
Yeah.
like what advice would you kind of give yourself? In your case, though, we touched on it. Like, it definitely still feels like, although you've accomplished a ton already, it definitely still feels like you're the kind of in the beginning stages, kind of
Yeah.
your investing journey and
Yeah.
scaling. And so, for you, I'm going to kind of ask I'd say an inverse of that question. Like, if you were to look ahead into the future,
Yeah.
and you were able to kind of wave a magic wand and change either like a rule or like a law related to real estate investing in Ontario, um, like what would that be?
Okay, that's a great question. Obviously, the normal question is probably what would you tell your younger self? I think, you know, obviously, like you said, I'm still kind of in that growth mode in the beginning. I think I wouldn't really change much about my journey because I think it all was meant to happen in a certain way, and I think like that's the whole reason why I'm here today. And I think I have a long journey ahead of me. So when it comes to that future me, I mean, obviously, like you said, like if you're changing a law, I think like Canada in terms of investing should be more like the States. You know, having that 1031 exchange, being able to actually invest. Like there's a plethora of supply when it comes to apartments and multifamily in the US, and there's obviously a lot more competition, but at the same time there's a lot more supply. So I think in Canada that's the opposite. Like there's a lot less supply when it comes to multifamily. So that's why there's, you know, the prices are the way it is. I think if we introduce some sort of 1031 exchange, also at the same time with some sort of like purpose built development, so like sort of aspect combined with that. And I think they are trying to push for that in the next little bit, but it also doesn't
Yeah,
make sense when it comes to the construction aspect because of, you know, wages and construction costs and also red tape when it comes to building. I think if they kind of removed a lot of those like barriers, then people like me would go build multifamily. But you know, unfortunately, it most of the opportunities don't really pencil out because like of the fact that like a huge amount of a cost per unit goes towards the development charges and taxes and fees to go and develop a multifamily building, right? And at the same time, it's
yeah,
not very like encouraged, right? We're encouraged to just, you know, work a 9 to 5, just do, you know, like give half of our paycheck to the government, and that's exactly what we're encouraged to do. We're not encouraged to like invest in the community. We're not encouraged to like do certain things that helps housing. Like it's either your
yeah,
investor and majority, like they just change the tax rules. Like if you sell a property, majority of your taxes profits are going to go to taxes, right? So obviously who benefits the most? The government in that case, right? So
yeah,
there's not much else you can do in that situation.
yeah. They're definitely not making it easy.
Yeah.
And you touched on like a few of the challenges that I think resonate with a lot of investors that buy in Ontario, right? Like for me, like I'd say, and I think you touched on it, or it's a bit of kind of an underlying theme of like all of the pieces you touched on. But for me, it's just like ease, or I guess in this case, lack of ease of like information flow.
Mhm.
And so, like for example, like if you're looking for like off market deals, or like just looking for that next deal, being able to like in the US, like quickly either purchase or find like lists of potentially motivated sellers, like it's a lot easier just given kind of the call it like privacy laws over there.
Mhm.
And like not to say that like privacy is not important,
Mhm.
But I think over here, like if there's an evolution where it's easier to access
Yeah,
information,
yeah.
like it'll hit on a lot of those pieces you mentioned, right?
100%. I think like obviously there's pros and cons. Like if there's more hoops to jump through, then there's going to be more, potential of like more upside in that sense, right? Because there's going to be people like even now, like a lot of people are saying, no, I don't want to be in Canada anymore. I don't want to invest in here because we're not incentivized. But at the same time, that creates a huge opportunity when it comes to like people who are still in Ontario who have no plans to like leave and still want to invest and still want to do what they're doing. I think that creates a lot of opportunity because people can, do exactly what they used to do and just find those hidden apples and just find opportunities where everyone else is kind of blindsided because they're all distracted. It's like, okay, I'm going to go to Alberta, I'm going to go to Florida, Texas, and all these other things. But I think if you're really focused on one thing and you're really focused on one niche and you just ignore all the noise, ignore the media, ignore the what's happening in the day-to-day market, I think in the long run it'll definitely pay off for just focused on one specific sort of niche strategy.
Love that advice. It's definitely wise words to live by for sure.
Yeah.
And so, like, if we switch gears a little bit, I would love for you to share either like a past deal or a present deal that you're kind of working through, like where you feel like you've learned a ton
Mm.
and like you've grown kind of the most as an investor.
Okay, sure. That's a great question. So I think actually the majority of my really like experience and kind of stories that I would have to say actually came before I even owned all of like my current properties. I think after I bought my first property, I started like, doing a lot of research, kind of trying to meet a lot of people and go to networking events and things like that. Along that journey, like several months after closing my first ever property, I met someone who's now my mentor. He actually owned like I think two at the time maybe 200 units or so, and I was really interested in the multifamily space. So I reached out and I was like, what are you looking for? Maybe I can help find a property, and maybe I can like help you out in any way or provide value in any way. So and I in my head I was like, okay, I'll do that for absolutely free, no costs or anything. I just want to learn as much as possible in a short amount of time. And ultimately I took a year off school and moved out to London specifically to work as an acquisitions manager, just find him opportunities, like talk to building owners. And I learned a lot in that 1 year. It was really hard work, like maybe 12, 16-hour days at minimum. But I think it was like one of those events in my life that really changed the trajectory because I had, one property, I didn't really know what I was doing. And then after I just learned how he was able to acquire deals, he was able to negotiate deals, he was able to turn over these deals and manage them. And it was like, basically now I'm applying all of those strategies that I learned into my own, portfolio on a smaller scale, obviously, and eventually hopefully get to, the point that he is right now. But when it comes to like experiences that I learned, I think really like, we used to do like walkthroughs of buildings on a weekly basis, and just meeting the different types of owners and different like you meet certain types of personalities that are kind of that mirror each other. For example, like there's your Italian dude that owns the property and has been in the business for X amount of years. You have your like your widow that owned the property with her husband, and there's certain types of personalities that you see kind of mirrored from building to building. So I think understanding those 5, 6 different types of people like really help you negotiate and help you like connect with these people, right? Like I mentioned before. But I think if you're talking about like one specific moment, it's hard to pinpoint like one specific moment. But I think I don't know, there was probably one building in London that we walked through. The owner, she's just same thing, very similar situation. She was a widow. She was already at her elderly age, but she was taking care of her mom, who was like around 100 years old. So like obviously she just didn't want to be in the business anymore. She just wanted to kind of move on. But understanding that she didn't need the capital, she just wanted to just stop managing the property. We were able to come up with like a win-win scenario where she doesn't have to take care of the property. We take over the property, and she closes with the minimal amount of cash in hand because she didn't need the cash. She already sold a couple of other properties, and just being able to, figure out her actual pain point was kind of like is a good experience because I just saw how my mentor was negotiating and talking to her and just making, there was like 4 or 5 other buyers that also walked through the building before us, but ultimately she sold to us because we were able to connect with her on a deeper level and make a win. It was not about the cash. It was not about the number, the price. It was not about when we're going to close. It was not about any of that. It was strictly about what's going to make her life easier, what is going to really benefit her in the long run, and what her reasons for selling is right now. And obviously knowing that it was in cash and understanding that sort of initial kind of process where you're asking questions and trying to go deep into what their, like I said, pain points are, that really helped me kind of navigate, future deals, right? So I guess that was one of the moments where it really taught me like how to negotiate, how to talk to, certain types of people.
Nice. I love that. And like, are you able to share kind of like high level numbers for that specific deal, or something else that you're working on?
Sure. I mean, I think like that one not too relevant. Like I wasn't really involved after that point. It was just like, I can share another deal, like maybe one of my personal deals that I'm doing right now. So it's just, so we just closed recently on a 10-unit property. It's on 6 acres of land. It's one of the deals that I'm kind of excited about because there's a lot of future potential. And right now, I think what we're
Nice.
really focused on is really turning over the existing building, getting it to a point of cash flow, and we can sit on the property for a couple of years, several years, and then eventually potentially build out more apartments. And if there's more sort of grants or government's kind of incentives to build, then we're going to take that opportunity and build it out. For now, we acquired it at a very good price where if we're able to turn over the existing building, there's no downside in holding the land, right? Because we're not kind of like, once we turn it over, we're going to be cash flowing, and then there's no kind of rush to go build out 100 units, for example, right? It's on 6 acres, so there's a lot of potential. You can do single family, you can sell the lots, you can build multi-residential. So really excited about that specific property.
Nice. Yeah, it definitely sounds like an exciting project. And so, actually, on that note, like for those that are listening right now, that like maybe they have like one or two rental properties, like maybe they're just single family homes, and they're thinking about like scaling to like larger multis. Like any specific advice or like things you'd recommend one would think about like as they're kind of going through that transition?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think the main like skill set in terms of acquiring one of these buildings, it's really not how much money you have. It's really not like like if you know how to do a renovation, if you know how to renovate a bathroom. It's not any of those. I think the biggest skill set that someone would need is actually just like I mentioned before, just being able to find an opportunity and identify an opportunity that's able to be very lucrative in the short or and long run, right? Like it's not I'm going to
Yeah.
buy this, renovate it, and magically it's going to go up in value. I think especially in the multi-residential space, it's more like calculated. Like I said, it's very like if I'm buying it at X amount of cap rate and I increase the income by X amount, and then it's going to be worth a certain amount after like the as complete value. So I think if you understand the sort of mathematics behind running numbers and how buildings sort of operate in certain locations, I think it's actually really interesting because sorry, it says reconnecting. Uh,
Hey,
okay,
sorry, I'm gonna. We're
yeah,
still recording, but can you
yeah,
hear me right now? Because you
yeah.
were distorted like
I
for
can
like
hear
the
you. I don't
last
know. I don't know
four
when it cut
minutes.
off. I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, in that case, just for the sake of editing,
Mhm.
um, I'm gonna pause and then I'll ask the question
Okay.
again, and
Okay.
then you could just
Why don't
respond
I
again.
hold on before you do that? I'm just gonna switch my Wi-Fi so that. Hold on. Sorry about that.
Sure.
Okay. It should be a lot better now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds a lot better.
Okay. Test. Test. Okay. Cool.
um, yeah. So I'll see if I think it's editable,
Yeah.
but I'll let you know if we need to re-record anything after the fact.
Okay. No worries.
Cool. Yeah, and so it's interesting you share that. Like, that actually leads to my next question. Like, what advice would you give, like, for those that are listening right now that might have maybe a couple rental properties, like maybe they're single family homes, and they're thinking of making that jump to multis. Like, what advice would you give them?
That's a great question. So I think, generally speaking, like there's certain skill sets when it comes to buying a multifamily property. Like I think when it comes to like being able to execute on the deal, like if you know how to do a renovation, if you know how to like manage a building, I feel like these skill sets are very easy to sort of like learn. But I think the hardest thing to actually do when you're getting into one of these buildings is really knowing how to identify opportunities, right? Knowing how to run your numbers and know how to reverse engineer, like I was mentioning before, reverse engineer the process where it's basically just a mathematics formula, just a calculation to see how much, you know, X amount of dollars you need to put into this building to turn over Y amount of units, and what purchase price you need to do that at, and what time frame you need to do that in order to, you know, own the property without having any of your own capital, you know, let's say 2, 3, 4 years from now, right? So I feel like knowing how to understand, you know, what a cap rate is, what a net operating income is, sort of all the general basic expenses to a property, understanding those things and knowing how to identify opportunities is probably the number one skill set I would say. You know, if you're looking to get into multi-residential, that's the number one thing you should look for and learn, and then, you know, start identifying opportunities, seeing, okay, would this make sense to own right now, and also understand how much capital you have up front. If you don't have much capital, okay, there's certain things you can do to navigate that. Like you can introduce what's called a vendor take back. You can, you know, have money partners. You can bring in, you know, equity or debt partners. There's a lot of different ways to make it work. And the number one thing is just making sure that you have a good opportunity. And there's a lot of like opportunities out there. You just have to go find them, and you just have to create them. It's not just, okay, I want to buy this property for this price. No, it's a lot more than that. And I think the real deals and the real like properties that you can really like truly make a lot of money from is if you're able to create the deal when it comes to structuring it and how you're going to go about managing it after you close, etc. So that's one thing I would say is the number
Yeah.
one most important thing, just making sure that you have an amazing deal that's structured very well, where there's little downside but significant amount of upside.
Yeah, I love that you say that, right? Like, as you said, like the some of the best deals are made and not just found, right? So
Yeah.
that's great advice.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if you're doing it long enough and you're in the space and you're in the game, there are certain deals that are just found that you just stumble across. But it's not just you're not in the space at all and you just randomly you come across a deal where you're able to, you know, make X amount of equity on the buy. No, if you're doing it, you're in the ground, you're in the dirt, you're in the mud. You know, you're finding the opportunities. You're gonna stumble across some that are just, you know, too good to pass on, and you just take it and you don't have to do anything. You know, like that's obviously, but that takes time and skill to identify those opportunities and that you're able to execute and go and you know, not think about anything else and just go in. And that's very similar to the 10 unit I was talking about. I didn't have to really run many numbers and like do all the due diligence. Like I just knew it's a property based on the purchase price and sort of tenant demographics, etc. And you know, that's one of those things
Yeah,
where I just saw it. I saw it the next day, made an offer, firm, you know, just, you know, go from there, right? So yeah.
I love it. Taking action, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the other things, like listeners, like maybe thinking about is like they might want to get into investing, but like as you know, like everyone lives busy lifestyles, right? And so they may not think they'll have the time to necessarily door knock or like kind of like do all the kind of those fundamental activities to kind of build their like knowledge and kind of skill set to take action. Um, from your perspective, like what are some of the or like what's like a key productivity hack that you leverage like as you're scaling your business that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, of course, 100%. I think, I mean, I would say that, you know, as you get older, as you have more responsibilities, it's 100%. It's way more difficult to kind of manage all of your certain things that you're in, especially if you have a full-time job. Maybe you have kids. Maybe you have, you know, people that you take care of. It's going to be a lot more difficult in that sense because you only have a certain amount of time to devote to other, like investing, for example, right? So I mean, for me, I'm kind of fortunate where I don't have many responsibilities and I'm very young, and you know, I have a lot of time to devote. That's why I'm really making the most out of it right now. I would say if you're in kind of a position where you don't have much time, I would say like just looking at other people in the space and how they manage it. I would say, um, I would say it's truly dependent on the kind of person you are. If you're the kind of person to, that will work your 8 hours at work, but then work another 6 hours on your own side hustle, your own business, then I think those are the people that really succeed. And that's the small little difference between someone who isn't going to be successful and then someone that really forces them to be successful. Like no one's just thrown into success, right? I mean, yeah, you can be born into it, whatever, but the people, the space that we're in, the space that, like, the investment community, like, most of us didn't come from all that, right? Like, the reason why we're working so hard is because we didn't. So I think, like, you have a choice. Like, everyone has a sort of choice to do what they want with their free time and their extra spare time. um, I would say if you use it efficiently and you really force your way to, like, pushing the needle forward every single day, I think that's the most important thing. And it comes with time, it comes with effort, and you can't just be half-assing life, I would say. Pardon my French, but half-assing life. And you gotta really push forward. So I would say that's my advice. I mean, I would say if you're in your 30s and 40s, maybe don't listen to me, but that's the small thing that I would say. But just looking at other people in the space, that's kind of what I would say. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and like you mentioned, obviously, like leveraging your network, leveraging your community, because there are people out there that either have done what you're looking to accomplish, and can guide you, or are going through it right now too, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think, yeah, like you mentioned, having a network, like, for me, I really focus on going to these networking events and meeting people, because there's certain connections that will, like, you'll connect with someone on a very personal level at one of these events, and you'll really, if you pick their brain, if they're actually doing some crazy stuff in their journey, then if you can learn from other people, that's like probably the quickest way to succeed. And, like, one thing that I did, like I mentioned, I learned from my mentor, and I met him at, like, networking, during networking, like webinars, things like that. And I really leveraged that relationship because I was able to provide value, and then in turn I learned a lot, right? So having a strong network of people, it doesn't just come to you, like I mentioned. It's you have to build it. You have to go out there, shake hands, meet people, and that's pretty much the only way to kind of, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Who, not how.
Exactly.
One of my favorite books. Yeah. And so, keeping with the theme along productivity, like, are there any like specific tools or like applications like that you'd recommend, someone starting off might leverage, or even an experienced investor?
Yeah, for sure. I think you're referring to, in terms of, like like optimization, in terms of, like, efficiency, how, like, things that they can use to make their life easier. I think
Yeah.
one thing that people should really look into, and it is sort of like a investment when it comes to, like, monetary wise, and I would say, like, we're all busy with our day-to-day lives. We all have responsibilities that we're taking care of. We all have maybe a business or whatever that we're working on. I would say the one thing that truly separates average people from really successful people is the team, right? Is the people around you, like we were talking about. And
Yeah.
having sort of someone by your side, or like a team of people, really changes the trajectory of where you are. And yes, it is an investment, and it is sort of something that you're going to have to put time, energy, effort, money as well into. And one of those things that I personally use are virtual assistants. So I personally have like 3 4 full-time virtual assistants within my business that really help me to get to that next level, because there's certain things, certain repetitive tasks that I can't keep doing because I have more higher value, higher dollar per hour tasks that I need to do, and I outsource the things that are not valuable in terms of my time, because it requires a lot of volume, a lot of follow-up, a lot of kind of day-to-day management. And if I can outsource that and still have that running, then it allows me to focus on what matters, right? And I think people should focus, like, if people implement that sooner, they can really understand different ways that they can systemize and delegate, like, their business tasks too. And I think that's one really important thing, that it's hard to get over the hurdle, because yes, you're now responsible for an employee, But I think once you step over that line, it really changes your trajectory, because now you can multiply the amount of time. Instead of having 40 hours a week of work, now you have 80 hours a week, right? And it keeps going from there as the more people you get on your team. And knowing how to delegate and knowing how to outsource tasks strategically, based on the person's skill sets and like things that they're good at, I think it's one of the skills that truly is built up over time. And the only way to start is just taking that step.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's great advice. And um, like with VAs, like are there any like specific kind of pros and cons or like key considerations one
Yeah,
should make? Like maybe even just thinking about, okay, like at what point does it make sense
yeah,
to even have a VA as an example?
yeah. When you say,
Beyond just the cost, of course,
of
right?
course, absolutely. Like it's cost, but it also takes up a lot of your time in terms of training and managing. I would say pros and cons. Like pros, like I mentioned, like you're able to multiply your time and you're able to, focus on the, like basically taking what they're doing and turning that into money essentially, right? But cons, obviously, like like I mentioned, it takes up a lot of time. And when it comes to training, when it comes to even finding the good candidates, when it comes to just screening and just making sure that the person you're going to bring in is going to fit within your culture and your goals in terms of a business, right? So like that's mainly the reason why I started my company called Task Tuesday, and that basically it removes all of that hard work for you. We basically provide virtual assisting services to investors, realtors, and property managers, and also mortgage agents. So like we remove that whole initial process where they have to post job ads online, they have to screen the people, they have to do background checks, they have to interview. We kind of take all that, and we understand people, what their criteria are as investors, as business owners, right? Because I'm in the space, and we understand like the kind of qualities and skill sets that we're looking for. So basically with that information, I'm able to source amazing, good quality candidates from Philippines specifically, and specifically Philippines because the work ethic, the types of people and the qualities that you're able to find there are unmatched, in my opinion. I've tried other countries and other places, and Canada is probably one of the worst, but ignoring that. But when it comes to virtual assistants, if your business is truly able to systemize when it comes to offloading those sort of digital tasks or remote tasks that's able to be delegated, I think, yeah, like you mentioned, like if you're able to figure out how to onboard and start somebody, that's the biggest thing. And I would say like the biggest challenge is, okay, now if you're gonna do it yourself, you can absolutely do it yourself. You can absolutely go source your own VA. You can train them from the ground up. It's just it's that time process that if you do have that time, amazing. But if you're a busy person, you have a business that to take care of, or a job or a family, I would say don't even bother with that. Focus on what you're good at, and let someone else focus on that whole initial process that I was just mentioning.
Yeah, that's great food for thought. Like I've had experience, like I use VAs personally, and like
Mhm.
to your point, like lot of the first things you think about is the cost, right?
Yeah.
And so um it is extremely valuable like if you leverage them strategically.
Mhm.
And like for to your point earlier on just thinking about like what are those kind of repetitive lower value activities that you might not necessarily need or have the time to do on a regular basis,
Mhm.
um and transitioning that to a VA and you kind of your broader team. I think that's definitely an effective approach.
Yeah, 100%. I think like people like they focus on kind of minimizing their expenses, but I think what's really important is maximizing the amount of revenue you're able to bring through the door. And if you're able to systemize that and just make a whole process that's able to just generate you appointments and leads, and if you're able to make it in a way where you're able to focus on those appointments and those meetings and networking, then you can outsource pretty much everything else. So yeah, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, cost is the kind of biggest hurdle that people have to overcome. And once they're able, like I would say, even before hiring somebody, you have to make sure within your business, like your things are taken care of. You can't just expect someone else to understand your business when you don't even understand it. So even before you hire like someone else, I would say making sure that your processes and systems are in check, so that you're able to teach someone how to really like get implemented within the company, and what, and have a level of understanding of what you're looking to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. Jude, this has been a fantastic conversation. Like I appreciate you sharing all of your experiences and the tips for our listeners. But before I let you go, like what could you share in terms of like what's next for you? Like as we look ahead to the remainder of the year, and then like what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think so right now my biggest focus, like I mentioned, is in the multifamily space. I have certain goals when it comes to multifamily, but I also really am trying to build this virtual assisting company because it's really something that helped me in my own personal business, and I developed a passion when it comes to systemization and optimization of other people's businesses. So really being a consultant for people like in a similar position to me that wants to delegate and outsource, I'm really taking a big focus on that. And then on the multifamily side, like I mentioned, having a big network and building connections is very important in the space. So my real big focus is also just connecting with people that are looking to buy multifamily properties, but also at the same time connect with other sellers of multifamily properties and kind of connect the dots and make the like buyers and sellers happy in a certain way. Maybe not in terms of like being a real estate agent or a broker. I think more so on the connection building and relationship building sort of thing. I have significant amount of people that are looking to sell their multifamily apartment buildings. Some deals may not make sense for me, but my goal is to kind of build up a list of people that are looking to get into the space and understand their criteria when it comes to buying. Everyone sort of has their own comfort levels when it comes to capital, when it comes to size of deals. So understanding someone's criteria and goal allows me to kind of reverse engineer like what they're looking for and find them opportunities that are able to fit that criteria. So building up a list of people that are looking to buy and also kind of leveraging my list of sellers and my book of business, I guess you could say, is what I'm really focusing on. And then for active business, definitely the virtual assisting company. And yeah, so
That
to connect with me, yeah, my Instagram is Fergo Estates, and my virtual assisting company is called Task Tuesday. And yeah, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to connect and understand what your goals are.
awesome, exciting stuff, Jude. Thanks again so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Mario. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Black Wealth Effect podcast.